For many cancer survivors, the end of treatment is not the end of the cancer. It's the beginning of a different life. That is what people mean by the new normal. I'm Paul, and this is Paul's Heart. And I'm the author of the book, Paul's Heart Life as a Dad and a 35-Year Cancer Survivor, available on Amazon. It doesn't mean you're settling for less, nor does it mean you're giving up on who you were. Instead, it recognizes a reality that cancer changes you physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You're no longer exactly the same person you were when you walked into treatment. And in many ways, trying to become that former version of yourself can just become another burden. The person before cancer lived with assumptions that disappear after a diagnosis. Before cancer, many people assume tomorrow is always guaranteed. Their body can be trusted. Life will follow a predictive path. Serious illness happens to other people. And cancer permanently changes those assumptions. Even after remission, many survivors carry a heightened sense of mortality, anxiety before scans or follow-up appointments. We call that scanxiety. Physical effects from treatment, new limitations or health concerns, a different perspective on what truly matters. That doesn't mean that life becomes worse. It means it becomes different. The person you were is not gone. One of the biggest misconceptions is that survivors should strive to get back to normal. The truth is, you can't unknow what you've experienced. You can't erase the fear, the hospital rooms, the chemotherapy, the radiation, the surgeries, or the conversations that changed your life. Those experiences become a part of your story. They don't erase your identity, they reshape it. Think of it like climbing a mountain. You can never return to being the person who has never climbed it. The climb changes your muscles, your confidence, your fears, and your appreciation for the view. And why you shouldn't want to go back. Many survivors eventually realize they wouldn't trade the wisdom they've gained, even though they would gladly trade away, the disease itself. I would love to have what I have right now and never have had the cancer. But life doesn't work that way. Cancer often teaches us lessons that healthy people rarely think about, like time is more valuable than possessions. Relationships matter more than achievements. Experiences weigh more than material things. Small moments become extraordinary. Gratitude becomes intentional instead of automatic. And someday becomes today. Many survivors describe living more deliberately because they understand how fragile life really is. And you have to understand, there is a grieving process that cancer survivors need to go through. That grieving of losing your old self. Okay? And we don't talk about that enough. Our oncologists don't prepare us for this. Okay? Many survivors grieve who we used to be. You may miss the body you once had, the energy you once had, the confidence that illness would never happen, the carefree version of yourself. That grief is real. But over time, many people discover they are not simply mourning a loss. They're meeting a new version of themselves. And this new normal isn't a destination either, because that's going to change over time. The first year after treatment is often all about the healing and the recovery. The next few years are about rebuilding confidence. And years later, many survivors stop thinking about cancer every day. I did, but it still influences how we make decisions, spend our time, and view life. For some, the new normal continues evolving decades later because of late effects, aging, and survivorship create new challenges and new perspectives. But perhaps the best way to think about it, the goal is not to become the person you were before cancer. The goal is to become the strongest, wisest, and most authentic version of yourself. because of what you lived through, not despite it. The old you survived until cancer. The new you knows what it means to face mortality, uncertainty, suffering, hope, and resilience. That person often carries a depth of compassion, gratitude, and perspective that simply wasn't there before. In that sense, there really is no going back. And for many survivors, after enough time has passed, they realize they wouldn't want to. Not because cancer was a gift, but because surviving it transformed them into someone who sees life more clearly. For someone who has lived many years beyond treatment, the new normal becomes often less about surviving cancer and more about living intentionally. Cancer stops being the center of the story and becomes one chapter in a much larger life. A chapter that changed everything, but did not define everything. As a 37-year cancer survivor, I can tell you, my life is not about cancer. I spend a lot of time here on TikTok and on my other various media pages talking about cancer issues. And I mentioned in a recent video how I don't get the views or the responses to my feel-good stories about things that I do with my daughters or achievements that happen to me. I get more views because people are looking for support, okay, as they approach this new normal. And I get that. But I've got to tell you, it takes time. You know, whether you're done with your treatments one day, whether it's a year, whether it's 5 years, eventually you do get back to a life. It's a life you never thought you'd see coming, but it's definitely the life you were meant to have. And as a cancer survivor, I'm glad you're going to have that chance to have it. Until next time, this is Paul's Heart.